everybody. This is John Sider, your podcast host for the Olympus Wealth Strategies podcast. With me today, I've got a special guest. He's a great friend and wonderful business person, Jacob Stripling. We're going to talk today a lot about the current state of the labor markets in Arkansas. We're going to get to know Jacob a lot better as a person, and we're going to have some fun today. So I'm very thankful to welcome a great friend of mine, Jacob Stripling, to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Man, so let's just dive in. So tell us a little about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I own and founded Future State Careers, which is an accounting, finance, and IT direct placement recruiting firm a little over 5 years ago. Started it in October of 2019, and then we had our first kid in February of the next year, and then COVID hit. So it was the best time to start a recruitment company. Everyone quit hiring, so it worked out really well on the front end. But I always knew that I wanted to have my own thing and love working with other people and trying to help them where we can. And recruiting was kind of an easy avenue to do that.
So where were you at before you made the jump?
So I spent about 3.5 years at a large IT staffing company called Tech Systems, global company, huge, great people, still really good friends with all the people from there. And it was a great launching point, learned a lot. But it was a bit different from what we're doing. We don't really operate in the same space, different models. So, but learned a ton and, translated well.
What was the desire to do your own thing?
Yeah. I mean, uncles in the family, my dad, had a business, grandfather had a business. It was kind of in the blood a little bit. But I just knew, it's one of those things where you have good ideas and you're like, I'd like to be in a spot where we could execute on all these ideas and we don't have to go to somebody about them. We can, and also there's something about the pressure being on you and you not having to rely on a bunch of moving pieces, which, there's some great parts about it in a big company. And there's also, some challenges that come with it. But I knew that going out and I feel like selling myself is a little bit easier to me. And so that was a big motivation for why we stepped out.
Let's talk about family real quick. Cause you mentioned as soon as you launched, you had a kid and then COVID hit. Mm-hmm. So what's the family look like today?
So now we got 2 girls. We got Ava's 5 and Heidi's about to be 3. And then we got our first boy in the family since me that we're having here in about 3 weeks. And so, it looks a lot different, but it was funny. Actually, the first year we started, my wife's a nurse, a NICU nurse at UAMS. And so for the first year and a half or so, I would stay home with our kid while I tried to build the business for the 3 days a week that she would go work. So it was, with COVID, it was like, well, we can't just do a total free fall. So, but that was, it was a special time. A lot of mentors are always like, you're never going to look back and, wish you'd done more with work or whatever. Usually the regret is not spending enough time with your kids. So I always try to think about it that way when I would be home with Ava the 3 days a week and, I'm on the phone and trying to make sure she's not crying. But yeah, so it was a special time. And it's something that hopefully I would love to be able to grow our business into something that someday they could be a part of, or anybody who works with us, same thing for their kids. I mean, we're huge. We've talked recently about we love any kids in the company sponsoring their teams or whatever, things like that. And so family's a huge part of what we do. Yeah.
And just being able to have that control and be involved how you want to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, when I first met you, this was, 4 years ago. We were talking about, you said, hey, even in slow moments, you looked around and I thought, this guy's an entrepreneur. You looked around and said, there's so many ways to make money, John. I could go if business ever got really bad, I could go deliver packages for UPS. I could go lay cable line for AT&T. And I thought, this guy's just an entrepreneur. He just views different ways to make money.
Yeah, I don't know. So far the business is still going. But yeah, I was talking to a guy yesterday where it was like nobody forced me to go and do this business, so it's like when times get tough, figure out a way to make it work in the meantime. I'm not going to look around for somebody to save me or something like that, and it's not one of those valiant, look at these people who are going and doing things on the side to make it work or whatever. It's like, nobody's forcing me to do this. So, feels only right that you'd be willing to go and make it work, whether you got to work at night or whatever. I mean, cause things do get tough. I mean, we're only 5 years in, but, I think that a lot of times from the outside, it looks like things are going great. And then you get inside and you're like, hey man, these are the days when you're sitting in your living room with your head in your hands, just being like, what have I done?
Well, I think that's every even employee, right? Every employee hits different challenging moments, whether it's goals put on them by the company or management, or obviously as entrepreneurs, right? We put pressure on ourselves to succeed and grow, whether it be for our own personal achievement or for, to support our families or ultimately to kind of help the greater mission of what we're doing. So I think there's always pressure. It just is a different, it just depends on what seat you sit in and how that impacts you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's, it's not only with what we do, but it's with so many people. I mean, over the past decade, I've had thousands of conversations with people looking for jobs. And I mean, it's not unique to what I do or to what you do. Like, it doesn't matter the level or the position, like that pressure is always going to be there. And so it's just kind of part of it back then.
So obviously Olympus Wealth Strategies, we're a holistic wealth management firm here in Little Rock, Arkansas. But, a lot of clients are tied to what's going on politically and economically, and that ties right into the labor market. So can you give us kind of your take? Obviously, there's the headlines right now are tariffs and interest rates and what that's going to do from an economic standpoint. Anything on what you see boots on the ground of what companies are doing today, whether it be locally. I know you also help place companies well outside of Arkansas with top talent. So what are you seeing right now?
Yeah. So the tricky part about market trends or generalizations as a whole is that you'll say something, but then you go into a lot of the companies we work with and each one is so case by case. And, where it's like, if you're this title, you should be looking for this money. And so somebody goes out and does that. And then they realize, but at this company, I can get X, and at this company, I can get Y. And so it's a tricky thing to place a blanket statement over a lot of that. The one thing that never changes regardless is that good people are always in high demand. That never changes, obviously. But with the market, I think that right now it's becoming something that is more difficult to navigate in the sense of you can't just go out and apply to jobs like you used to be able to.
Well, especially coming out of COVID, right? It seemed like you could apply and get 10 different offers and name your price.
Yeah.
But it seems like that's not the case today.
It just depends. There's certain skill sets, but yeah, it's just one of those things where we talk to so many people, and it's the hardest thing is that a lot of times when you're talking to these people and they're in that moment, whether they've just been laid off or looking for something new or miserable where they are, and you're trying to give them hope, and it's easy to do it from our perspective. But a lot of times when you're in that, it's really hard to pull yourself out of the situation and see that there's some good that can come from this, especially, if you're in a bad situation and you get something better. But I always talk to people about how it's easier said than done. But if you can really pull yourself out and look 5 years from now, if you look back on this time period, you're building to something that is much better. That just is the truth of the matter if you'll do the things to get there. And, there's no better things a lot of times without pain. And so it's, again, I know you're asking about the market, but I think it's just to generalize a lot of those things is tough because, we work with
so many different industries.
Oh yeah. And it's so different across everyone to every company. It's so different. And even within departments of the same company, it can be different. So that's why I'm a big advocate on having, the more you can build your network, the more you can talk to people and just get more points of data to where you can kind of compile your own conclusion with a lot of these. And we can give you benchmarks for certain things, but a lot of it can be tricky.
So let's talk about maybe networking and how that impacts not only businesses, but also candidates, right? And so hopefully we're going to shed some good value for your listeners that are both on both sides of the aisle for you, both candidates and clients. As far as the candidates are concerned, like you said, hey, some people, it's hard for them to either make a move or they just were forced into making change, and they've got to kind of see the 5-year picture. What could they do, whether they're preparing to make that jump or they've already been forced to make that jump? What can they do to set themselves up for success?
One of the toughest things that I see, and it comes with a lot of people who are extremely loyal and good at what they do and care about people and they love their company, is that they just have no idea what else is out there. And so you get so ingrained at a place and you start thinking like, this must be as good as it gets and I'm not loving it. And so, so I think that that's where it starts to become so important to, obviously, putting a plug in for recruiting, but find a recruiter that you like. It could be us or it can be somebody else, but find somebody that you like and that you trust and that you feel like is plugged in enough that they can help you get to where you want to go. And it doesn't have to just be one. Talk with 2 or 3. And also be talking with other people in the community. I mean, there's conversations that I have daily, ones that I've had this week and last, where, you know, people will walk through everything with me and I'll be like, hey, have you talked to anybody else about this? And be like, no, I'm nervous too, you know? And it's like,
well, it's such a private thing that you have to carry with you,
Definitely.
right? Because especially if you're looking for a job, or you're about to make a jump, you can only tell so many people within your closest inner circle, because, you know, you can't just go into your office space and talk to the people in the break room. Hey, I'm thinking about making a job change, right?
Yeah,
like that's a way to get walked out the door.
Yeah. Well, and this is one of those things that is usually there's a pretty easy workaround, but, you know, you can always do the asking for a friend thing. I mean, I've tons of times over the years where people have been like, hey, I would love to talk. I've got somebody that I know who's actually kind of looking for something new. And then after we get on the phone and we establish some trust there, or, you know, meet with them in person or whatever, and they're like, hey, actually, it's me that was looking for the job. So there's a lot of ways that you can get around that. And now, I mean, with all of the, you know, search functions through AI, I mean, just a basic Google search, you can get so much information. I think a lot of times it comes down to the same thing that, you know, we deal with as business owners, where it's like, I don't even know the questions to ask, you know, like, what do you need help with? It's like, I don't know. It's a good question. You know, like when I'm talking to my CPA and he'll explain a bunch of things to me and he'll be like, so what questions do you have? And I'll be like, I don't even understand.
I don't know what to ask.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's where I think, you know, being plugged into those things, and just when things go well, and I experienced this really heavily personally, like when things are tough, all of my habits start to elevate. And so I'm looking around like, okay, where can we expand the network? Who can we meet and talk to and learn and drive
that feeling of, hey, my back's against the wall,
right?
And I've got to make something happen,
right?
And I know I've got the talent and resources to do it, but now it's showtime.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the problem is that once people get into a better state, and people, I mean me, then you start to forget about all of those good habits. And so then you look up and be like, well, I've been happy for the last couple of years, but now a couple of things have happened and I'm not. But I haven't been putting in those good habits or making those connections or, you know, broadening my network. And so I'm not able to go and talk to those people because I've been happy. So it's a really tricky thing that you have to make sure that you're disciplined and consistent on, to make sure that you don't look up and be like, oh crap. Like,
well, it's a consistency, right? But it's hard for me to even believe all the people who, whether they have a much larger podcast than this or not, right? That say they get up every day at 3:30, they do the cold plunge, they read 17 books while they're on the treadmill. You know, they're doing 4 different things, you know, at once, every single day for years on end. I mean, maybe that's possible, but I think you know, most people are going to go through phases where, hey, they have to grind and put their head down really hard. They know that the recipe for success is hard work, but at the same time, they don't want to look up 10 years from now and go, hey, all I did was work and I missed out on raising my kids, or, you know, I missed out on things that it wasn't even worth, you know, the effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think also it can be inflated to think that you have to do these big things and go to networking events and go to conferences and, you know, pay for coaching and do all these things. Like, it can be really, really small incremental moves that allow you to put yourself in a situation where, like, I mean, one of the guys that works with me, we were talking this morning and he was just talking about saying yes to more people who are like, hey, would you be interested in talking about this or that? And he just says yes more because, you know, I mean, I'm sure you've heard it. It's kind of cliche, but it's like a lot of times you're just one conversation away from things changing, or one introduction away, or one idea. And so I think it can feel overwhelming if you let it, but if you really just block out all the noise and really focus on what matters, it's small changes that you can do. I mean, that's what we like. If you're really unhappy at work, do the small things, like have a conversation with your recruiter, start working on your resume, start seeing what else is out there, start talking with the people that know you well and that you trust. They could give you feedback on what you're thinking, because sometimes it's like, I'm really miserable with this. It's like, well, the grass isn't always greener. Let's talk about the things that you've got going right now that are great. And so that feedback can be, you know.
And I would imagine you give that feedback with some level of regularity. Hey, you may not like everything about the job that you're currently in, but what you've got from a total comp standpoint, whether that's true dollars, soft dollars, environment, culture, you're in a really good spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, that a lot of times, I mean, we've had people that we've talked to who have come out and said they're looking. And when we really push back, not in a way to convince them that they're not looking, but just to really get an understanding of what's driving them, there have been many times where we've come to the conclusion where it's like, I don't think you do want something new. And they kind of come to that realization on their own. But you know, I mean, there was somebody that we talked with the other day who said, I think I'm just ready for something new. And so we started talking, okay, great. Like, what does that new thing look like? And the more we talked about it, it's like, do you not have that where you are? And the answer kept being yes. And so it was one of those things where like, just be careful. Like sometimes you just need a change because it's time for it.
Yeah.
But other times you think it's going to be better and you had no idea what you had. So,
well, tell us real quick. You said a few different things. You said, hey, reach out to a recruiter, talk to your inner circle, do some research online, leverage AI, dust off your resume. Anything else that you tell candidates to really hone in on to try to present themselves or prepare themselves for it, either going through that search with somebody like yourself and your company, or ultimately just making sure, hey, once I get to that first interview stage when my resume makes a big enough attraction, what do I need to do to actually feel like I can walk in very prepared?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think one of the main things is because the whole process can feel consuming and overwhelming, is just to like sit back, take a breath, realize that, if you actually, I forget the quote, but it's like fear a lot of times is embedded in the unknown or something like that. And basically the point of the quote is that like when you actually sit down and write out like the scary parts about what you're going through, it's a lot easier to deal with. And so I think that with this, because you're thinking like, what are the steps I have to take? So I have to go out and make connections, and I have to talk to a recruiter, and I have to get my resume right, and I have to make sure I've got every company that I'm applying to.
It can feel overwhelming.
Oh, it can feel super overwhelming. And so I think the first
especially
step
when, hey, you're, from 8 to 5, you're committed to your job. From
no doubt
5, from 5 o'clock, you come home, it's family time. Mm-hmm. And then you put in that work.
No doubt. And then even when you're interviewing and then you're waiting on, well, I'm really interested in this company, but they haven't gotten back to me, and this one hasn't gotten back to me, and this one did, but I don't know if I want to take that one. I mean, it can be a lot. And so I think the first thing is to simplify, sit back. And that's where I think the encouragement from, if you have the right recruiter or friend or family member in your corner, they can help you chill out a little bit and see that, the sky's not falling, even though it can absolutely feel like it is. I don't mean that to dismiss how difficult the situation can be. But obviously, and this is low hanging fruit, but if you don't have your LinkedIn profile optimized, talk to somebody about that. And the thing that
how often are applications even submitted through a company website nowadays versus whether it be going directly through you or even one of those, is it called LinkedIn Easy Apply or something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just, there's so many different avenues today. And I mean, there's tools that will literally just go and apply for you to all these companies, because some of these people will talk about, I've applied to, 1,000 companies and I've heard back from 5. So you're dealing with a lot of that, which can be tricky. But one of like our mantra is your story told right. And we believe that a resume or a job description is barely a representation of who you are. It's impossible for it to be, right? I mean, you talk to somebody, like if I was telling somebody about you via a one-page piece of paper, and I give that to somebody, be like, you really think that sums you up?
Well, especially when it's just bullet points, right? Here's where I worked. Here's for how long. Here's what I did. Here's the systems I'm proficient in. It doesn't tell the story of who you are.
Right. And so
which is probably the most important thing, right? Because I'm speaking for you right now, and let me know if this is wrong, but it's important to have the skill set, but I think it's probably more important that companies hire really good people, because I would imagine that skill set can be honed in. As opposed to, hey, if you're just not a good fit, but you've got all the right skill sets, you might kill the culture.
Yeah. And I mean, we work with some insanely talented groups of people where the hiring managers, we'll go through. I mean, a lot of times, like the really good ones, we'll walk through the job description and then basically just throw it out because we need to talk about the person. Or for example, like, I'll go and sit with leaders of companies and we'll talk in a way where I'll say, hey, sitting here with you guys, I'm pumped about what you guys are talking about. You're doing really cool things. You're futuristic. You're creative. You're treating your people right. But when I look at your online presence, like, I don't necessarily get that. Not that it's bad, but it's just like, and so doing those things as a person looking for your job, knowing that you have so much to offer, and just trying to make sure that that's evident anywhere that you can, through a cover letter or a resume or your LinkedIn.
Now, Jacob, I've got a question about that. Cover letters, are those essential now? I haven't applied to a job where where I always felt like, at least for me, it always seemed like a cover letter was some old school thing that, you know, was a requirement, but just to almost test your writing skills. But is it really more kind of that, what you said, hey, here's the bullet points of your resume, but this cover letter really maybe could tell about who you are as a person?
Yeah, no doubt. And that's where the cover letter comes into play. Don't do one just to do one.
Okay.
But there's a lot of people, you know, where when they tell their story, it's like, that's different. And people will want that. But it's impossible to get that in a resume. So say it on your cover letter. But don't just do one to do one. Don't do the, you know, ambitious professional with 10
put
years.
in a ton of effort.
Yeah.
Don't just go into ChatGPT and say, here's my resume. Please type up a cover letter.
There, For example, there was a girl that I talked to a few weeks ago. And one of the things that she told me was, I'm the person who will do the jobs that nobody wants to do and will be happy to do it. Do you know how many people want to hire that? Every person,
everybody,
ever.
Every company has stuff they don't want to do.
Exactly. So with somebody like her, and the thing is, or a company that I was talking to the other day, and he was walking me through all the ways that they're different. And I told him, I was like, man, those are the things that need to be front and center of your thing. And you weed out the candidates who wouldn't like that. And that's good because they wouldn't be happy with you anyways.
Yep.
And so the same thing with the cover letter. I think it's, you know, for that girl, I mean, I am just such an advocate of being a little bit different anywhere that you can be, because even if you have a great skill set and background and experience, and you don't differentiate as much as you think. Even if you're a CFO or a CEO, there's still a lot of others that if you're just looking at your skills and your resume, you're going to blend in. But you don't blend in. Like as a financial advisor, like I've talked to tons. If I just looked at, you know, hey, here's what we do at Olympus, be like, yeah, sounds like everybody. Yeah, it sounds like everybody. And so, but when I deal with you, I get a totally different picture. And so that's where I think it comes into play too with the girl who said, I do the things that nobody wants to do. I'm like, man, that should be like, have a cover letter and literally have one sentence and it's that. Like, I think anywhere that you can just make somebody stop, because every resume and every job description, if you look across the industry, which we get to do every day, so we have a different perspective, but it runs together. And I think that, you know, in the same way that we're constantly thinking as a company, you know, it's like the certain things like, well, we operate with integrity, or we're a family, or, you know, whatever it is. And it's like, yes, everybody claims to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
and a lot of it's just empty platitudes.
It can be, but there's some who really do it, but it's so hard to get it out.
But you can't lead with that.
But I like to have it out there front and center.
Yeah.
You know?
So you talk about basically commoditize it, whether it's wealth management, recruiting, permanent placement, candidates on a resume. You talk about how things are very commoditized. And so maybe let's talk for a second about future state in a commoditized field, right? Which is finding talent and placing that talent with really good companies. How do you separate yourselves?
I mean, it's a good question, and we talk about it every day. And I mean, a lot of what we do is offering our time, expertise, you know, being consultants on certain things free of charge, and expecting nothing in return. And a lot of good people, I mean, again, that's not unique to us. It's just unique to people who want to do things the right way. It's not like we're the only recruiting company doing that. There's other great recruiting companies doing that as well. But to us, I mean, you know, for our slice of the pie that we're going after, it's like, that's what we want to be. And also, I mean, our goal, you know, is to create the best place to work in the world. And so one of our core values is us first, like before clients, before anybody, not because clients aren't important, but because we believe that our employees are so important that we want to have their backs. We want to know that like they're supported above all else. And because of that, because you feel safe and you feel supported, then our customers are going to get treated better than any customers in the industry, because we feel so safe and secure in what we're doing.
Treat your people right and the business follows.
Yeah. And we just want to pass that on. And so, you know, I think that is a differentiator. I think that a lot of times, of course, we want to put the customer first from the standpoint of we want to be, you know, the thing that they need us to be and deliver and all those things, but not at the cost of our people. That's just.
Well, I've seen you do that time and time again. And for people that have been going through job searches that I've sent your way to talk to you or your team, they've come back with kind of this generalized phrase, which is they put the relationship before the revenue. And don't get me wrong, we run businesses. We got to keep the lights on. We got to put food on the table.
Sure.
But it's refreshing to hear where people say they cared about me and took the time to learn about me, as opposed to just saying kind of the bullet point things on the resume. All right, what's your skill set? How much do you make? How much do you want to make? Where do you want to work? Okay, I'll find you something. Mm-hmm. Where they said, hey, I was chatting with him for an hour and a half, and I hope he picked up a lot of stuff that he needs, because we just had a conversation.
Mm-hmm. And that goes, back to, like I was saying, I mean, the resumes, the job duties, the company, those things, I mean, it's so hard to differentiate with that. And so it's like, if we don't know about you, because you have so much to offer and you have a lot to offer as a company. And,
which is Future State's mantra, right? Your story told right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's the way we try to differentiate. And I think it's the way that everybody should try to differentiate as a candidate or as a company. Now, again, there's got to be some substance behind this.
Right.
It's not fluff. It's got to be real. But like I said,
and that's probably a lot of it is just tearing down those walls from whether it be candidates or clients, right? And really getting a peek into who they are, mm-hmm. and what makes them tick, yeah. and what's going to make them happy.
Right. And it's, some of it comes from years of doing it. I mean, it becomes somewhat of a skill to be able to pull that out of people. And also it's hard to pull it out of people without having an established trust level. Because why are people going to open up, let all their walls down and their guard down when they don't know you? So it does take time to do. But I think the way that, again, that we try to differentiate is by offering the free things. And, if somebody's reaching out to, for example, a guy reached out a couple of days ago asking about an ethical dilemma that he was in. And I, talked to him and I was like, hey man, I just want you to know, before we even talk about this, I'm not going to pitch you on anything we're working on. Like, this is not about me trying to sell you. You reached out for help and that's all I'm going to give you. And if you want to talk about more, we can, but that's not my goal here. So, and it can be hard. I mean, our time is valuable. It's
Sure.
literally our most valuable asset that we have.
That's right.
So there are times where you really got to check yourself where, I'll be like, man, I don't have time to deal with this thing or that thing. Like, we have a lot going on, but then we go back to being like, who do we really claim to be? And like, if we're going to say that, I mean, the worst thing ever is just saying empty promises, somebody who says a lot of things and does nothing. And so,
and that gets sniffed out so fast.
Yeah, it definitely does. But it's also just annoying.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, in all of our meetings, like, we kind of have a policy where it's like, don't say any idea if you're not willing to do something to tie you to it right now.
Yeah.
And so we're big on that. Just doing what we say.
Let's pivot real quick to clients or employers. Mm-hmm. If top talent is always such in high demand and people are always hiring, right? I see your guys' jobs board. You guys are working on a lot of different jobs. Mm-hmm. How can companies stand out to be more competitive to actually get this top talent, whether it's in Arkansas or you're placing people, in different parts of the country? What are things that in today's age are attractors outside of money, right? Everybody wants to be compensated fairly from a dollar standpoint, but what are the maybe intangible things or things that are flexible that a company can easily control if it's not on the their P&L for a salary? What can they do to show top talent, hey, we really want you. This is maybe the most we can pay you. Or on the flip side, a person's about to leave and they say, hey, I got an offer for an extra $10,000 and I'm going to leave. What maybe could they have within their culture to either keep talent or attract top talent?
Sure. Well, and it's funny, you mentioned money, but I mean, I would say over the last, I don't know, it seems to be extremely prevalent over the last year. But, when we ask candidates to stack rank what's most important to them, money is so rarely at the top. I mean, of course, all things have to be equal. People
Sure.
can't take where it's like, yeah, cut my salary in half. But it's funny because I actually made a LinkedIn post a while back and the guy came in and said, he's like, no, this is so tone deaf. Like, people only care about money. And I was like, well, I don't know. I'm not saying this. The people that I'm talking to are saying it. So maybe they're lying.
You're getting it firsthand.
Yeah. But so it's interesting to keep that in mind. Of course, if you're trying to nickel and dime people, that's a different thing. And that's a deeper rooted issue. But there's so many things that I think are indicative of the company that come out in the interview process that the ones that we work with, who we know from both sides, this is just going to go well no matter what, are the ones who are flexible and who also know that, like, no longer is it, hey, you're lucky to be talking to us. It's like, no, you're lucky that they took the time to apply and that they were interested enough to apply.
Yeah.
And so there's of course a mutual respect there. It can't just be like, the candidate walking in and like real arrogant. But if you can find that mutual respect, and the companies that we work with who do a great job of that, I mean, they just have no problem. Like once the person gets in the door, and a lot of times it's hard. I mean, there's so much noise. There's so many companies there. If you're hiring for a controller, cool. So is everybody. You're hiring for a senior tax manager, cool. So is everybody. So it's hard to stand out like on the digital workplace. But I think as soon as you get somebody in the door with the interview process, the ones where, it's not like, look, we've got lives outside of work. So if you can't meet within these times, sorry, you're out. I mean, we work with companies who it's like, look, do they need to meet before hours, after hours, on a Saturday? So flexibility is huge. I think that obviously pay and benefits, but those are kind of a baked in.
That's table stakes
thing.
though,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. And so, and it's the people who prioritize and come into the interview prepared, where it's not like, okay, so tell us what you know about us. It's like, here's what we know about you, and we're really excited to talk to you. And I think the companies who do that well and who prioritize it with their time and with their efficiency and with their respect of the candidates, like, hey, in the same way that you guys are really busy, like, I mean, for example, if you have a 3 or 4 step interview process, that this candidate isn't only interviewing with you guys. And so if they have 3 steps with you and they're all on site and they're working, that means they had to take 3 hours to interview, probably 30 minutes both ways to commute. That's 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours. And they're probably interviewing with other companies. So I think the companies who are really considerate of that, it's a big thing too. But again,
like you said, meeting before, after hours, on weekends.
Right.
And probably if they're talking to top talent and they recognize that is top talent that you sent their way, they're probably thinking, how can we speed up this interview process? Because if ours is a 3-step requirement in person, and that's going to take a week, few weeks, we might lose this person to another company that they might be talking to.
Right. And the thing that you hear from candidates all the time is after 2 or 3 or 4 interviews, and it's like, okay, you've met.
What else do you want to know?
Yeah. Well, and it's, you've met with our HR or our recruiter, and then you met with the manager, and then you met with the, director, and then you met with our C-level, and the person's like, they don't know that they want me yet. Like, we still got some boxes to check. And so, we just see a lot of companies who will be really, again, flexible on this to say, okay, if you can make it in today, we'll just stack everybody. It may be an intense process, but like, we'll stack everybody here because we're trying to, make sure that you don't have to come back, or we're trying to be considerate of your
Or maybe
time.
take a half day away from work and we'll get HR, the hiring manager, the senior manager, and the C-suite all for you in one day.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I think it's just being considerate. And the funny thing is that the people who do it really well, a lot of times will have come from recently being a part of that process. And so they're way more empathetic to it.
Yeah.
But you just hope that it doesn't take you going through something hard to be empathetic to somebody going through that hard thing. But yeah, I mean, the ones who do it well, they're just super flexible, very considerate. And they also have their story down well. When we sit and ask and you say, what's different about your company? And they say, well, we're like a family. We have happy hours and we laugh in the office. And it's like, I'm not saying that's bad.
We have pizza parties.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's not bad. That can be a good thing. But just know, again, the same thing with the resumes, that doesn't stand out. Every company in the world says that. And so when we talk to companies, I mean, I've sat at tables where I've heard stories where it's like, wow, man, like we got to get some stories like that because that's different. I mean,
share the story real quick about the position that you filled at the firm that we both know, the gentleman that runs it. And when you asked him that question, they came back with a very touching story.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, and it was, the funny thing was when I asked them, and it was, again, one of those where we kind of took the job description and said, look, this is what it is, but let's talk about you guys. And they almost didn't know what to say because they had so many stories come to mind. So when I was like, what you guys say, you're a family, go into that deeper. And I'm just being like, well, what do you want to know? Like, that's everything we do. And so they had a cool story of a guy who was just coming in and his tire had been low. And so the team just quietly took a collection, put 4 new tires on his car, never told him, like things like that, where it's like, how does that stack up versus we work hard and we play hard?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so different. And so, that's with us. Like, we're constantly, I'm really fortunate to be able to hear stories like that because it makes me self-reflect all the time about what we're doing And are we doing enough for our people? And like, it's just, I mean, it's us first. Like that's our first core value. And so we push so hard into that. And so hearing those stories is always, I mean, it's funny. We kind of have like a thing where it's like, look, I would love for my family to come work for you guys. And hopefully that's everybody we work with. Obviously some are going to be better than others, but when you can tell those stories and when you know, there's ones where guys have told me and they say, it's a good question. Like I need to think more about that and I don't have a concrete answer. So I think it's just good to keep front of mind when you have that story and you have the flexibility and you have the full package. It's like, and you're going to be able to get whoever you want, honestly. And it sounds simple and it kind of is, honestly.
And just being authentically you.
Yeah.
So let's talk for a second about how the maybe career dynamic has changed over generations, right? My grandparents only ever worked at one place. My dad basically only ever worked at one place. But you and I have both made changes. And it seems like in today's world, making a job change 1, 2, 3, 4 or more times is not uncommon. So maybe can you talk a little bit about why people end up changing? Because there seems to be, you know, there's always two different sides, you know, to that answer, at least from what I feel like I hear. Either employees say, well, my company's not loyal to me, or, you know, just reverse, the company's like, well, you know, they, you know, they're replaceable. Right. So, so why do you think there's more job change now than in generations past?
I think the market's so much more visible.
I think it's just really from technology and transparency.
Yeah. And also they're just, you know, being more opportunity now than ever, you know, like within a company. I mean, there's so many departments with so many different job functions. And I think that that's a big part of it. And also, you know, a lot of these companies, and I think that the good ones, the ones that you hear, and now with, you know, really good motivational podcasts from a lot of these business leaders, they have the mentality where it's like, look, like if you don't spend your whole life here, like as long as we, you know, when you pour into us and we pour into you, whether you stay here forever or something else is better for you, we're in full support. Like we'll help you get something new. It's one of the things that we always talk about, where it's like, I actually asked one of my guys one time, if he were to have something new, like I just, you know, always want to make sure they're happy, but let them know, like, man, if something else is better for you, something else is better for you. And he told me, he was like, man, if I got a different job offer, you'd be the first person I'd come to talk to and see what you think.
That has to make you feel good, right?
Yeah, it makes me feel like
because
amazing.
It's, I would venture to say 99% of current employees do not go to their boss just to say, hey, I got this job offer. What do you think about it? Should I leave you?
Yeah. But I, in that vein, I think that a lot of people are in spots where it's like, man, sometimes another company has a need for you that your current company might not. And it's just maybe it's a better growth pattern, or maybe sometimes, you know, maybe it's 20 or 30,000 more dollars. And like when your employer is able to say, listen, like, I wish we could meet that. Like we're doing everything for you that we can, but it sounds like a better opportunity, honestly. And I think that's just where it's like, you know, work is not our life. And hopefully your workplace can be your family. But at the same time, like you always got to do what's best for you. And so there is a balance between that and just jumping every year because you think it's going to be better and you think it's going to be better and it never is. But yeah, I mean, now the average tenure is closer to 2 or 3 years.
Is that right?
Where, oh yeah, especially within IT. And a lot of times, you know, it makes sense where these companies, especially with outsourcing or, you know, whether it's just coming in as a service company, it's just everything is so different. And so, yeah, the tenures are way different. And also the expectations from companies just have to shift a little bit to say, like, I know you want somebody who's going to be here for the next 10 years, and maybe they will be. But now if you get somebody for 5, that's a long time, you know?
That's high tenure.
Yeah, it's high tenure. And so, but it is very different. Like, for example, the, you know, company who had the story about the tires, I mean, in the boardroom that I was sitting in, I mean, they had like a combined, you know, I don't know, 70 plus years of experience between like 6 people. And so probably way more years than that. But yeah, it's just different. It's different generationally. And I also think that this generation on average, tends to be more bottom line driven. And so that's a bit of a different thing, you know, or
now other generations would say we're not patient. Do you think plays a part of it? We want to be the director today. We don't want to be the frontline employee.
Sure.
Do you think that ties into it a little bit?
I think sometimes it definitely can. And I think that from the same way where, you know, you have to be empathetic to these people who are coming out and saying like, you really want them to just stay here for loyalty and development when they could go here and make $20,000 more immediately? I mean, that's a really hard thing to ask somebody who's just a few years out of school to turn down and to see that long-term vision.
That's life-changing from a growth standpoint.
No question.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you do a good job of painting the vision, then you can have people who will sacrifice that. But a lot of times I love the leaders who I talk to who are really introspective about those things. And when somebody has something better and they're like, I don't think I did a good enough job to show them their growth projection or where they could be in 10 years. Or maybe you're so busy that you forgot that they're not really getting poured into and they're not getting developed. And so if it was if you're in their spot, you do the same thing.
Or maybe it seems like sometimes managers might think, hey, you're doing a great job. I'll leave you alone because I've got other, holes to plug over here and over here. And next thing you know, a year, 2 years goes by, and that employee's sitting there going, man, I haven't been poured into. What am I doing working hard, just sitting here, showing up every day, and not getting any love in return.
Yeah. And that's a really tough aspect of being somebody who's really good at their job. A lot of times is that you will get overlooked because you don't want to feel like you're complaining or like you're the one who keeps needing more or whatever.
People want autonomy, right?
Right.
But at the same time, you also want to be told, hey, great work.
Right.
That you're really helping us out.
Yeah. And it'll be great leaders, honestly, like really good people who do care about their people who will just forget because the person's doing such a good job quietly.
Yeah.
Like they just do their work, they do what's expected, and they, never cause any problems. And so the person will think like, you're killing it. Surely you're happy, right? And it's, you got to make sure that you're being consistent. I mean, I know a lot of companies who will go, almost on a weekly cadence to make sure that the people are happy. So
another question, I think both for candidates and employers, I've made cross-country moves for job opportunities. Mm-hmm. How often are out-of-state candidates considered for positions? Or do they really have kind of the deck stacked against them because they're not in market?
Definitely depends on the level of role. A lot of times, if we're talking C-suite, really high level, really in demand skill sets that are maybe pretty rare, then you may be going and getting people from, the East Coast or the West Coast or whatever. But it's, it just is kind of part of it that people would honestly or obviously rather have somebody who's here now, just, less barrier to entry. But I mean, it happens. And the tough part now is that so many people have gotten accustomed to working remote that people don't want to move anymore.
Yeah.
I'll just find something that's remote. Or I was talking to a guy yesterday who said, man, we can't find anybody who wants to travel. And I was like, yeah, it's just kind of like the nature of the beast because people don't have to anymore. There's enough jobs to where you don't have to. And also I think people's priorities are shifting, like where it used to would be, man, I'll do anything for this company, to now it's like I got other priorities, I got kids, or I got
be a little more well balanced.
Yeah, or I just want to do what I want to do, and it's not always at work. So again, that's a different thing I think generationally too. Where it used to be like, I'm here to work, and I think now it's like, yeah, I'm here to work, but I also, have other things going on.
So Jacob, we're coming towards the end of the podcast here, and hopefully it's been really great both for employees and employers to get a little bit about who you are, who Future State is, and ultimately kind of some things they can do to either seek opportunities or attract top talent. Anything you want to leave them with?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, if I've learned anything over the last decade, it's that so much of this that feels so complicated really isn't. And then it just comes down to people, no pun intended, where it's like, that's all we deal with. And the ones who do it well, they seem to have a singular focus, and it is people, and it is culture, and it's just doing things the right way and treating people the right way. And it's like
looking at them as a person as opposed to an expense on their P&L.
Yeah, exactly. And just knowing that playing the long game, whether it's, with somebody's career, with your own career, with your company, is that, it's not always going to show up as the quickest, profit margin, but in the long run, like it just works better. And it honestly just feels better.
Yeah.
Overall. So,
well, Jacob, I appreciate you joining us today and appreciate your time and insight. And everybody, really excited to keep the Olympus Wealth Strategies podcast going, especially here in person in the podcast studio. And we're looking forward to introducing the next guest on our episode coming up.
All opinions expressed on the podcast by the host and guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Olympus Wealth Strategies or Uptick Partners, a registered investment advisor. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not legal advice and should not be relied upon as a basis for any decisions. The investments discussed on this podcast may not be suitable for all investors and involve risks that should be carefully considered. Listeners are encouraged to consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Certain investments may require specific investor qualifications, which not all individuals may meet. Any funds or companies discussed are not a recommendation or endorsement. Guests in the podcast might be actual clients, but are not compensated to be on the show, and their experiences are not representative of all relationships, which might differ substantially.